Hello again, everyone. Very nice to see you again. I'm glad that you could make it. So, we're going to keep on trucking right along and jump into the next set of angelic dreams that I've had. We'll continue on. I will mention that in this dream, it had happened, I would say, maybe a few years later. I dreamt that I was perched on a rooftop. The area around me was green and mountainous and beautiful. The rooftop I was on was dark brown. There was an open courtyard below me, and I remember hearing a man's voice below me as he came out of a door and stood beneath the overhang I was perched on. I went down to him, and I approached him. His eyes grew very large, and he seemed shocked. He fell to his knees, and I told him to stand up. I took his arm gently and helped to lift him to his feet, and I said, "Do not be afraid. This job will destroy you and your family." He stood speechless and shocked, his eyes huge. He said, "I'm going to go to church every day. I'm going to buy a Bible and I'm going to go to church. I swear." I said to him, "It's not as important for you to go to church as it is for you to live a life of forgiveness and compassion." He seemed shocked by this information, and then the dream ended. So that was another dream I had had where it was an angelic type of experience. Again, I was further along in my healing, but this was something I wasn't looking for or didn't understand or know about. It was not something I actively pursued. So it just kind of happened. So in this next dream, I was also further, I was more in my spiritual journey. So you're going to kind of see and hear me interacting with other deities that I felt comfortable with or had encountered already. So I will begin. I dreamt that I was in a place that looked like a city. There were many lights everywhere and many people. I was looking around and I wore a very nice dress. It was red. I heard a deep and smooth voice call my name. So I turned. I saw Anubis, or Anpu, as he is known in Egypt, standing a distance away, adjusting his cufflinks on a very beautiful silk suit. It was the deepest shade of gray, and his vest was a muted but shiny tone of red, deep, deep red. His black tie was simple but elegant. His black jackal head stood tall as always, with his sharp ears large and pointed. He tilted his head to his left toward a very large elevator, as if he was motioning me to come with him. I followed him into the elevator and we began to move. Then the elevator stopped and the doors opened. He led me into an open room. The walls and floors were white like ivory, and there was a beautiful courtyard to my left. A huge fountain stood in the center with running water and a pool beneath it. The stone was also white, and a beautiful soft light spilled into this place from above. It looked as if there was a glass roof high above. I saw many beings that looked similar to angels. They had very, very colorful rainbow-like wings. I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, I have wings too. Maybe we can be friends." At this point, Anubis had walked into another area close by to handle something. I approached the angels and I smiled. Many of them looked at me with a very off-putting expression. I remember one of them saying, "She's such a phony. She's not one of us." And another one saying, "Well, she's not worthy of us. She doesn't go through what we go through." And then another said, "No, she's legitimate. I'm going to work with her." And then a male one said, "Well, she's not worthy of us, and I will never work with her." I felt very awkward. I felt very disheartened. I felt like I must have been such a fool to think I was angelic at all like them. Suddenly, Anubis appeared in front of the male angel who had just spoken. The angel fell backwards onto his bottom into the pool beneath the water fountain. He looked up at Anubis with great fear, and the other angels all froze in silence. I did too. I remember watching Anubis' fists clench so tightly his knuckles appeared pale beneath his black skin. He was huge and towered over the angel. His gaze was trained on him with something burning in his eyes. He was enraged. Suddenly, both Anubis and the male angel disappeared in a flash of golden light. The other angels began to panic and shout, "He took him! Anubis took him! He actually took him!" They shouted over and over, and they dispersed around me as if I wasn't even standing there anymore. I was frozen in my tracks, staring at nothing. And then I awoke. So, after that dream, I will say I was very, very surprised. I don't know what happened, really. I just know that I know that Anubis is very objective. He's a judge, right? So he's very, very objective. I'm not sure why he was so enraged at this, but I do think it was in light of what I was seeing. I think it had something to do with the way they were speaking about me. Is the only thing I can think of. But I also know that because of Anubis being who he is, I don't think anything bad happened to the angel. I think that maybe things were spoken about, communicated, maybe reiterated or talked about, and settled and resolved. But I don't think there was any harm or violence that happened. I just think he was upset. But again, this is Anubis, so he's usually more reserved in that sense of, I don't know how to describe it, but he's very strong. We'll put it that way. He's very strong. So that was that dream. I didn't wake from that dream feeling exhausted or anything. I just remember being surprised. So with this next dream, I was very, very surprised because most of my experiences had been with deities. So I never really expected to have this much of an angelic dream. So I will go right into it. I dreamt I was traveling to several different places very quickly, perhaps dimensions or existences I did not know. I would only stay in one place for a very short time before moving to another. I dreamt that there were several archangels trying to introduce themselves to me, including the one who fell. I respectfully declined that path. He nodded and walked away. There was another archangel who offered his hand to me to walk with him through outer space. I explained I could not accompany him in my human form because I would surely die. He said, "Come with me," and offered his hand again. I felt compelled to take it, and he pulled me through a clear veil which I could not perceive, and it shattered like glass once I took his hand and he pulled. I entered into space and felt coolness all around me. When an asteroid would shield me from the sun, I felt much colder. I realized that I had transformed into my mermaid body for some reason, and I began to swim through space. It was exhilarating. He was with me the whole time. Then I was transported to another area where the archangels were talking about making sure that Archangel Michael knew where I was. I remember seeing a beautiful face with skin like light. Light just seemed to emanate from their being, and their hair was golden and long. They were absolutely beautiful. The name I heard was Gabriel. When I awoke, I remember that name sticking with me. And when I looked at my phone, I remember researching a little bit about Archangel Gabriel before closing the browser and turning off the phone's home screen and lock screen. I went to sleep and awoke about 2 hours later and looked at my phone for the time. But I did not see the time. I saw a picture of Archangel Gabriel that I had never seen before. I never found this image of him ever. I never selected this image. It appeared on my phone, and he carried a half-moon staff and a sword. It was very impressive and humbling to feel him reaching out to me this boldly. I learned later that day that Archangel Gabriel also has power over the waters. About 2 days later, I also learned that my mom and her husband's trailer was flooded completely. It shocked me, but something inside me felt as if they were saying, "We've heard your cries, and we're handling this." I was amazed. So that was a very interesting dream. I was blown away when Archangel Gabriel came forward so strongly. I had goosebumps on my arms when I saw that picture randomly on my phone. I hadn't even seen that. I hadn't selected it. I was browsing web pages, not images. I was trying to find information. I had never even selected it. Plus I closed the browser and I closed the screen. I looked at my phone for the time, and that's not what I saw at all. It was just the statue, and I got chills, goosebumps, because I realized he was being very forward and showing himself to me. In the dream, the way I saw his face, it was almost like his face was like down and he was kind of like gently looking up like that. It was an interesting angle, but it was just a being of light. So very, very interesting dream. And I don't know why when I went through space with him, I don't know why I was in my mermaid body. I will go over, if I haven't already, my experiences of being a mermaid. But in many of my past lives, and this has been confirmed by different mediums as well, I was a mermaid. I am very connected to mermaids. I don't know why that was my automatic form to go to, but I turned into that and I was just swimming. I couldn't tell you. All I know is it was an exhilarating experience, and it was just funny because it seemed like they were all trying to introduce themselves to me, and they didn't have a long period of time to do it in. So it was almost like, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you." It was just very, very quick succession meeting of the archangels. And it was just so funny in the fact that they were just hurrying through. It was just really, it was quite impressive. So we'll go into our next dream. And with this dream, it was a little bit different because I don't want to say that I did meet angels, but it wasn't focused around angels. I dreamt that I was in a dark space. There was an angel who was cloaked in a dark gray cloak, and they led me to a huge door. He stood off to the side, and he continued to remain concealed. The double doors soon opened, and a bright golden light spilled forth. A beautiful angel walked through the doors, and he had brown hair that was shoulder length, with beautiful blue eyes. He wore gold and silver armor, and he had beautiful golden white wings. He looked down at me and he smiled softly. I immediately knew that this was Archangel Michael. He said, "Do not be afraid. You will meet the one who is called the Most High." And I remember I started checking my hair to make sure I was presentable and thinking internally, oh my goodness, okay. I met Father God Ra, and I didn't burn into a crisp, so I should be okay. Then Archangel Michael led me into the open doors, and I stepped through. Everything was filled with golden light and clouds. There was a golden throne before me, and a huge bright light sat on the throne. I remember bowing deeply. I sat on my knees, and I bent forward in a bow that was very, very deep. I then stood up, and my mother, Goddess Aset, was there at my left side. She smiled lovingly on me and gently held my arm and led me to stand on the right side of this being's throne. As I looked on the being, it felt as though they were smiling on me, and then the dream ended. With that dream, I met a being I had not met before. I also encountered archangels. And in that dream, it was the first time I had ever met Archangel Michael. And as I mentioned in my update video, the way I perceive them and the way you might perceive them may be different. It just is all about how they decide to show themselves to you. If there's a particular message they're trying to convey to you, and that's how they show themselves to you, it really just depends. So the way I saw them in this dream may not be the way you see them, and that's okay. Just remember, these are ultimately energetic beings. These are beings of divine energy. They are literally energy. So the forms they take in our dreams or when we see them may be different depending on how they feel they need to show themselves to you. Okay? So that was an impressive dream. I did some research and I even contacted a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Laura Burns. She has a wonderful channel and Etsy shop called Intuitive Dreams. She's an angel reader. So I went to her for some help regarding this, and she did some research as well, and she discovered that the one who is called the Most High, or the Most High, that was another title that they gave for God. So I found that very, very interesting. So, yeah. But my mother, Goddess Aset, was right there. She didn't seem like it was a foreign place. She didn't seem like she was in a strange place at all. she was just like, "Oh, hi, sweetheart." She was like smiling, like good job, or I don't know. She's always very loving. And there's something in my eyeball. She looked at me and just smiled and had me stand with her on the right side of this being's throne. And I couldn't see a face on this being. They were just light, but it just felt like they were smiling. I don't know how to describe that, but there it is. So thank you again for joining me for my angelic series of dreams. And I hope that you're able to have a very beautiful day and a very beautiful night. And thank you again so much. Please take care. Thank you, and good night.